That's not what we started to teach, which was that every baby is, I don't know, let's not even put it on the birth certificate. That's what they wanted.
Were we teaching that?
Yes, we
when
were.
Were we teaching that?
Teaching it. It was a law here in California. See,
to teach what?
Don't put sex on the birth certificate. We'll see.
Bill Maher is finally spelling out why he's done with the modern left, and the way he said it shocked everyone. Yes, he's sparred with progressives for years, but nobody thought he'd push it this far. Maher didn't sugarcoat a thing. He says the left has lost its sense of reality, its clarity, and its influence. And if it doesn't wake up fast, it could all slip away. This moment is loud, blunt, and explosive.
To admit this country is not as mature as it thinks it is. We elected Obama, and clearly the country freaked out. We're still living in that freak out. We are not as progressed and evolved and intelligent as we think we are because we keep freaking out about this stuff.
Well,
you know?
The left freak out too. The left freaked out about a lot of too.
What did they freak out about?
Gender, race, parenthood, schools, homelessness, crime, the border, education. Like we stopped being a scientific people.
Maher opens by laying out exactly why he's officially done with the modern left. But it's the final point that hits like a hammer. He argues the left has drifted so far from its own foundations that it's now openly dismissing basic scientific reality. And whether you agree or not, it's hard to ignore what he's pointing to. Debates where biological facts are treated as optional and identity is presented as something that can shift instantly with a simple declaration. Maher's point is blunt. At some stage, the conversation stops being about logic and starts being about rejecting objective truth altogether. And that's the moment, he says, where he had to speak up.
It's not scientific.
But the left certainly stayed scientific.
No, they didn't.
Why not?
Because they think
Maher doesn't mince words. He says the left's fixation on gender ideology was one of the key reasons they lost the election. In his view, the movement pushed the conversation far past what everyday Americans ever asked for or supported. While voters were worried about the economy, public safety, and education, Maher argues the left was busy trying to redefine basic biological terms and demanding that the entire country adopt those definitions without question. According to Maher, this wasn't just political overreach, it was a direct turnoff for moderates and independents. What should have remained a niche ideological debate was turned into a national litmus test, and he says that strategy backfired in a big way. The result? A self-inflicted collapse, reflected clearly in the election results.
Started to teach, which was that every baby is, I don't know, let's not even put it on the birth certificate. That's what they wanted.
Were we teaching that?
Yes, we were.
When were we teaching that?
Teaching it. It was a law here in California. See,
to teach what?
Don't put on the birth certificate. We'll see. Now, we've passed that period now.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. I mean,
I know, because it doesn't get in the blue sky bubble.
Wait a minute, I'm not just on blue sky.
I really think that's a lot of it, is that some of this stuff doesn't get in to everybody's media.
And now we're watching something remarkable. The left is quietly backing away from the very ideologies they once defended with absolute certainty. The same voices that push these ideas with unwavering confidence are suddenly acting like none of it ever happened. Today, they speak as if their past statements vanished into thin air, as if the internet doesn't remember. But anyone who lived through the last few years knows exactly what was said. They championed gender identity debates with zeal, framing any hesitation or question as a moral failing. It wasn't just advocacy, it was treated like a moral crusade. Now, with public backlash rising and political momentum shifting, those same figures are scrambling to distance themselves from the positions they once promoted loudly and aggressively. It's a full retreat from their own rhetoric, and everyone can see it.
Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century, a mess.
Maher adds another major reason he's done with the modern left: its new romance with socialism. He argues that socialism isn't just flawed in theory, it's a political nightmare in practice. Instead of energizing the Democratic Party, Maher says it drags the movement backward and threatens whatever momentum it still has left. Americans, he points out, have watched enough real-world examples to know how socialism usually ends, with economic collapse and lost freedoms, and they're not interested in repeating that experiment at home. Yet Maher believes the left keeps pushing an ideology voters simply don't trust, and rather than learning from the backlash, they keep doubling down. To him, it's not bold strategy, it's political self-destruction.
It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
Maher points to New York as the latest example of the left trying to reinvent socialism, polishing it, rebranding it, and pretending this time it will magically work. Lawmakers act as if they've engineered a smarter, cleaner version of the ideology, one immune to the failures that have followed every attempt throughout history. But Maher isn't buying a word of it. He argues New York is marching straight into the same trap countless nations have already fallen into. No matter how it's marketed, he says, socialism always ends the same way: economic pressure, oversized government control, and a steady erosion of individual freedom. According to Maher, New York isn't rewriting the story, it's repeating it. And history has already shown how that story ends time and time again.
And Playboy was what he hid under it. It was a surefire product. Pictures of tits and then 25 cartoons about Santa Claus. Plus real journalism. You could read an interview with Carter while enjoying photos of Bush. But then it started messing around with the formula. Like the Democratic Party, Playboy decided they didn't need straight men.
Maher argues that the so-called woke virus didn't appear out of nowhere. He says the Democratic Party created it. In his view, the party drifted away from the everyday priorities of its core voters: jobs, safety, affordability, stability, and instead dove headfirst into ideological battles most Americans never asked for. Rather than focusing on practical solutions that could improve people's lives, Maher says Democrats elevated gender identity debates to the center of modern politics. And that shift didn't stay confined to Washington. According to him, it spread into every corner of American culture, influencing schools, entertainment, corporations, and media. Maher even points to iconic brands that once represented mainstream American culture, like Playboy, arguing that they abandoned their original identity in favor of echoing the same talking points dominating the political left. To him, this cultural transformation shows just how far the Democratic Party has drifted from its roots. By prioritizing fringe ideological battles over everyday concerns, Maher believes Democrats didn't just weaken their political footing, they helped reshape institutions in ways that alienated the very people they claimed to represent.
Put transgender women and gay men on the cover, and predictably sales, like their subscribers' penises, collapsed. The staff began using terms like intersectionality, positivity, and privileging, and in response, Playboy readers used terms like no thanks, get the f*** out of here, and bye-bye. At one point, Playboy, yes, Playboy, even dropped the which is like cigar aficionado announcing, we're getting rid of the cigars. It went from entertainment for men to re-education for nobody and enlightened their way to unpopularity. Meanwhile, Kim Kardashian posed for another magazine and broke the internet with her.
Maher says the Democratic Party isn't the only one paying the price for embracing woke ideology. Any institution that jumped on that bandwagon ended up suffering the same fate. What many companies thought was a cultural upgrade quickly turned into a financial catastrophe. Brands that once dominated their industries suddenly found themselves pushing away loyal customers, watering down their identity, and drifting far from the values that originally made them successful. For some, the consequences were swift and brutal. Revenues sank. Stock prices plunged. Lifelong customers simply walked away. Maher points to Playboy as a prime example. Once a cultural giant, it tried to reinvent itself through woke rebranding and, in the process, lost the audience that sustained it for generations. Budweiser endured one of the biggest consumer backlashes in modern history after leaning into controversial social messaging. Even Sears, once a retail empire, embraced cultural virtue signaling while neglecting the fundamentals that kept its business alive, and paid the ultimate price. According to Maher, these companies didn't just miscalculate. They misunderstood their customers completely. In chasing ideological applause, they abandoned the people who actually kept their businesses afloat, and the market punished them for it.
Sometimes you gotta give the people what they want. But for some weird reason, it's apparently tempting for some people to not do that, because even Cracker Barrel recently decided that they felt a little embarrassed that it was so popular with bumpkins who salivate at the sight of an old wagon wheel screwed to the wall. So they changed it to this, which got them no new customers while pissing off the old ones. It reminded me of when Chuck Schumer said in 2016 that for every blue-collar Democrat we lose in Western Pennsylvania, we're going to pick up 2 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philly, Ohio, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Yeah, how'd that work out?
Maher argues that while Trump was out on the campaign trail delivering direct, tangible promises on the economy, national security, and job creation, the left was busy pushing an entirely different agenda. Instead of addressing the issues weighing on everyday Americans, Maher says Democrats poured their energy into cultural lectures, from gender identity theory to debates about trans women in sports. And while those topics mattered to a small, niche audience, they were worlds apart from the immediate concerns of voters worried about paychecks, crime, inflation, and the direction of the country. Maher points out that this disconnect became one of the defining forces of the election. By prioritizing abstract cultural battles over real-world challenges, he says the left handed Trump a massive strategic advantage. The result was a landslide victory that stunned many progressives, leaving them scrambling to understand why a message they viewed as morally urgent failed to resonate with the broader public. For Maher, the lesson is simple: when a political movement loses touch with the everyday realities of the people it claims to represent, it loses their support fast.
Cracker Barrel had the sense to immediately say, oh, sorry, and put the sling blades back on the wall. Democrats don't seem to be doing that. They still seem to want to be that upscale store that impresses celebrities. Anybody remember Barney's? It was this store in New York that started in the 1920s, as a discount clothing joint on unfashionable, grimy 7th Avenue, a place where their customers, the working man, could get a decent suit at a very reasonable price. I remember going there in 1993 to get my wardrobe for a new show Comedy Central was launching called Politically Incorrect.
Maher argues that the Democratic National Committee should have looked honestly at its recent failures and reconsidered the strategy that cost them key elections. But instead of correcting course, he says the party is doubling down on the same approach that pushed voters away. To Maher, it's baffling. How can a political organization rejected for prioritizing woke ideology respond by embracing an even more controversial agenda like socialism? From his perspective, it defies basic political logic. Rather than reconnecting with the voters whose trust they lost, Maher believes the DNC is drifting even further from them. He suggests this isn't just miscalculation, it's a deeper disconnect from the everyday realities Americans are actually concerned about. While citizens worry about jobs, inflation, safety, and stability, the party keeps experimenting with ideological positions that have limited popular support. For Maher, this exposes a troubling pattern. Instead of learning from defeat, the left keeps repeating the same mistakes, pushing policies that erode public trust and weaken their chances in future elections. In the end, Maher paints a stark picture. The left's fixation on woke culture, gender debates, and socialist rhetoric has alienated voters and weakened both the Democratic Party and major cultural institutions. Meanwhile, Trump's focus on tangible, real-world issues resonated with everyday Americans, giving him a decisive political advantage. Maher warns that unless the party shifts back to practical priorities and reconnects with its base, it risks reliving the same costly failures again and again, leaving its future increasingly uncertain.